it's all good. Yeah.
So yeah, you're Audrey Lemargue?
Yes.
Yeah, and you're naturalogist.
I'm a naturopath. I'm a nutritional therapist and a naturopath.
Yeah,
actually, yes.
So that's what I'd like to talk on, the importance of food, and mainly for pregnancy years, because I work with early years. That's my area of interest, the early years. And so yes, talk of the importance of food and how it influences pregnancy and then the brain development of the child. And I think we could start from there.
Okay, sure. So yeah, the importance of your alimentation during pregnancy is, well, on two levels. It's important. First, it's important for the development of the baby, obviously, but also for the mother's health, right? So when you think about the food during pregnancy, the main focus would probably be making sure that we're not intoxicating ourselves.
Yeah.
Number one.
And how do we know we're not intoxicating?
Well, and there's basic rules, right, in terms of the quality of the food you're ingesting. But and in pregnancy, usually doctors will tell you to be careful with raw meats, unwashed vegetables.
Sorry, what's raw meats?
Uncooked meat.
Raw meat. Yeah. And veg.
Because of potential, harmful bacteria that could provoke, food indigestion and intoxication, and that is it's one of the simple things you can do just to avoid any complications or getting sick, especially during the first part of pregnancy. And when you pay attention to what you're ingesting, you also need to think about what kind of nutrients you're bringing to your offspring, right? So you want to bring things that will be beneficial for its development, and that at the same time will keep your nutrient stores full. So when I'm talking about your nutrient stores, our demands in the demand on nutrients really increase during pregnancy, and especially when we're talking about the brain development of the baby, we need much more fatty acids like DHA, EPA, things that are found mainly in animal products like fish, like eggs, things that are extremely important for the brain development. And well, beyond the fact that you need all vitamins and minerals and things like that. But so if there was an advice I would give during that time is focusing on foods that are actually packed with antioxidants and nutrients. So we're talking about fruit, vegetables, and meats and fish from good quality, like grass-fed meat, and I'm not even talking about organic just yet, which is also very important, because part of the don't intoxicate yourself is also putting a food inside that is not full of pesticides, right?
Exactly.
But and if you have if you have a financial restrained on that level, there's always that list of the clean 15 and the dirty dozen that you can focus on. I don't know if you're familiar with that and if you heard of that. So
sounds interesting.
The clean 15 are the fruits and vegetables that you can buy even if they're not organic, because of the way they're either grown, or because of the kind of skin or they have, the impact on pesticides is not as big, and they're much less. So those are the clean 15. That list you can find online and is updated every year. And there's a UK list. There's usually a UK list and an American one. And when you're somewhere else in Europe, I suggest that you go by the UK list, because it will be the closest one to wherever you are in Europe.
Yeah.
So the clean 15s are the ones you can buy in the supermarket without being organic fruits and vegetable. And then there's the dirty dozen that you absolutely need to buy organic, because those ones will be filled with pesticides. And the same way the clean 15 are updated every year, the dirty dozen is always updated every year, and it's very easy to find online. And this is one of the things I would go by to make sure we're not ingesting things that our body is going to have to detoxify, that brings an extra burden beyond the fact that you're already building a baby inside your womb. Okay. So that's, I would say, number one reason for making, paying attention to the food you're ingesting. Beyond that, when you're pregnant, and some people are not aware of that, your baby can taste your food. So whatever you eat will influence in the future your baby's ability to enjoy certain foods, because your amniotic fluid will have the taste and the flavors of the food you ingest. So
that's so interesting.
Yes.
Like, does that happen, like, for example, when people don't like this, that, and the other, for example, and the mother never ate it, or is that the case?
Well, obviously it has an impact, yes, because, and for instance, I'll give you an example, and I guess in the UK it's very interesting to mention that, because we eat in the UK, we like spicy food. We have a lot of Indian influences, and curries can be quite, strong in terms of flavor. I'm not even saying AV. It's I would say it's an acquired taste, right? And the babies of which mothers were used to have curries or spicy foods, they usually don't mind that, and they don't mind when you're having a curry when you're breastfeeding after that, because they've been used to it. Okay. While the opposite might not be true. And so the importance of having good nutrition during pregnancy will actually be beneficial in the first years of your baby when it's growing, because it's gonna be used to actually certain tastes that is been tasting throughout the pregnancy. And the same way, you take care of your child you pay attention to the food you give to him. You should start that during pregnancy, because that's what you're doing already. The child is already there, and you want to give yourself the best nutrition possible, not only for you after birth, not to feel depleted, right? And also to go through a pregnancy with all the energy that you need, and also because you will influence your baby's metabolism after that. So it already has an influence with on how your baby is going to feed himself later on in life.
And for example, like a mother that doesn't like much fruits, because there are so many parents I talk with, or I give suggestions, eat this or eat that. Oh no, I don't like it. Oh, I can't eat that. So for someone that, for example, has a lot of
restrictions, dislikes, and restricts itself. Well, I mean, there's, I work with a lot of different people, and everyone has its own taste, right? And in a way, we need to respect that, and there's always ways to introduce new things
around
and things
it.
that they, yes, because sometimes people say they don't like certain stuff because they haven't tasted the proper way, but we don't have to insist on that certain stuff. There's other things that they might like, and let's focus on what they like instead of not focusing on the negative. And when I work with clients, usually we make a list of things that they like to eat, what they enjoy eating, and what's going to be beneficial in that for them. And I'm eventually we might introduce new things slowly, but first we work on what you like that is actually healthy, because there's always something that you're gonna like that is healthy, and that there will be a bridge to new things, and it's I would say, we can't build a city in a day, and we can't change people in one day, and we can't change old habits in one day. If we had bad habits, we need to do things slowly and one by one. It's this is the best way to go about it. Tiny steps, tiny habits, changing things slowly and slowly. Sometimes this is why it's good to work with a nutritional therapist, a nutritionist, a naturopath, because they will guide you, and you won't feel like you're a failure because you're not able to swallow that kale salad that tastes horrendously. I mean, this is not the way to start. There are small things, there are small recipes, and the idea is for you to have pleasure with your food, enjoy it, because how are you gonna transmit the pleasure of eating good and healthy to your children if you're not enjoying it yourself?
Exactly.
So it starts with you. So with small things. So let's not focus on what we don't like, but let's focus on what we like, and then from there taking small steps. One step at a time.
What else? And then the early years, the baby food.
Well, the baby food, okay. Babies usually, children generally speaking, they will mirror what the parents do. Okay. So if you have a good relationship with food, generally speaking, and if you are the kind of parent that will, set time aside to prepare dinner and then make sure that the family sits around the table to have food, half of the job is done. Really. And that, you buy real food and not food that has been, and I have nothing against having takeaway once in a while and having that as a treat, but taking the time to prepare food with your children, and it might not take that much time. Sometimes it's even easier than you think, and it actually could save you time in the long run. Will be the first step of your children starting to enjoy meals and the food preparation, and the food preparation itself is an incentive for your kids to try new things. Okay, involving them on that process. When they're watching you, they want to mirror you. They want to do the same things. It's like when children, when they start walking, don't teach them to put one foot in front of the other. They just watch you and they will mimic it. And it's the same with the food. If they see you eating everything, a little bit of good stuff, eventually, it might take a long time, and that's okay. But eventually they will want to taste. What is the fuss about? And there are, and there are personalities and children that are, different from each other. Let's respect that, but keep on presenting the food. It's like when you, if you do baby-led weaning, for instance, that's one of the ways of introducing food to children, which I believe it's one of, for me, the best way to do it. And the name itself talks about what it is. It's baby-led weaning. The baby will decide when is gonna taste food, and how we do this is we present the baby with foods in a way that he can grab it himself and try it himself and taste it, and he will pick and choose whatever suits him more, and also according to his needs, because they're so much more in tune with their own needs that they will go for the food they need the most. And usually the protein is the most important one. How you present the protein is also a very, very important way.
And that's another topic actually that I hadn't thought, but it is so important to just let the baby explore.
Exactly. But
I find adults worried they're going to get dirty, or they're using their hands instead of the fork or spoon, and it's just best to just leave them with no
restriction for
no pressure, no restrictions. Exactly.
It's not easy, and let's put it this way. You have to be prepared to get a messy kitchen and and a messy child
after, and you haven't got time to clean, or
the thing is, there's so much material nowadays to make your life easier, to do a very easy baby-led weaning, where you actually have those full it's like protection that goes all over the baby's table, and you just take it off and put everything to clean, and it's quite easy and simple. Obviously there are circumstances where it's complicated to do it, but you should always let the baby explore. Because babies and develop their senses in different stages, and the sense that is the most developed when they're young is the sense of taste. So it's the mouth. So that's why they put everything to their mouth. And there's another reason for that as well, in terms of ingesting some microbes that are essential for your microbiome as well. So they need to get dirty. In a way, we need to let our children get dirty, because they need those microbes to actually perform certain functions in our body that are essential, that we can't do ourselves, that some microbes are necessary for our actually healthy development. So
that's a big difference I find between well, I'm between Portugal and England, but in England people are more we're more outdoors. So we're in the middle of the mud, and the children are there on the floor. Obviously we don't, there's a bit of a limit, but generally in England, in the UK, we let them get dirty.
Yes, actually there's less of that hygiene, I would say frantic way of, because the Portuguese are very proper, everything needs to be clean. Although the children are king in Portugal, I would say, we treat children very well. In the UK, they're more free in the way they let children roam around and get messy and dirty. It's true. Which is good actually, and I've seen that massive difference, honestly.
Like the other day I found a mother with a very sweet with a baby, and the baby was starting to crawl, to walk, and he was crawling. It was a dirt path. It wasn't very sandy, but there was like a bit of dirt, and she just picks him up so he doesn't get dirty. But you immediately feel the child again, where the adult is stopping the child do what it feels, because generally the child knows what they want, how much they want to eat, what they want to eat, how they want to move, when they want to move, and the adult always interrupting the flow. For example, this baby, he wanted to walk, explore a little bit. It's cutting their self-esteem. It's bringing down their self-esteem, self-confidence, and
I mean, everything needs to be put in balance, and I agree with you. We have a tendency, and we're all guilty of it, tendency to interrupt that flow, and it's a very good way to put it. it's a flow, and we need to let that happen, and the movement needs to be fluid.
And that with eating is so important, isn't it?
It is, and it's a fine line between keeping your baby safe, because obviously we need to keep them safe, you know, because we sometimes, you know, we also need to be conscious that sometimes there's faces of dogs and cats that could be around, and you don't want your baby to either put you on, you know, either in that. So yes, there is a fine line, and it's, and especially because we've been raised in that such, you know, protected environment. We say in French, aseptisé. It's so very clean and completely sterilized in a way environment, that we're not letting our kids do what they need to do, what is necessary for their development. So yes, it is it is important to let them explore the food the same way, and relaxing about that is major. And making it pleasurable for them as well, you know. So, you know, from another thing that is important to mention, and going back to the baby-led weaning, is that we should not force or let baby or force baby foods into baby when they're not ready. And there's usually some physical cues that will let you know that your baby is ready to try food. First of all, he needs to be able to be sitting down upright alone and sustaining himself without your help. Okay. He needs to show some interest with the food, and we need to present him things that will make, we're sure that he will not choke with, and those are, you know, I would say, security things that we need to make sure of before we introduce certain foods. And there's it's very important as well to present foods that are not completely mixed or made in puree or made in a soup form. They need to feel the texture. They need to be able to masticate even, because the mastication is also a very important process for the swallowing process and for the development of their mouth, for the development of their breathing even. Everything has a reason to be. So like you say, we shouldn't interrupt the flow. Our bodies are extremely intelligent. Nature doesn't make mistakes.
No.
And if nature doesn't make mistakes, and if baby starts, you know, if they crawl, that means they will crawl around the floor, they will crawl around the dirt, and there's a reason for that. So, you know, all safety, you know, taken in account, you need to let that happen. You need to let that happen. And usually the children that are in contact with the most dirt, or, you know, are within the most that kind of environment, are the less sick children. They don't get as much sick as the others that are kept indoors. True. And don't go out as much.
They get less sick. They're less fussy as well, I think, and less and more creative in a way, I think, as well. I think it brings creativity or imagination, because we need to have while we're exploring, our mind is thinking, is processing the thought.
Absolutely.
So if we cut that flow, each one of us, the creativity will be less.
Absolutely. That's why we need to let their environment be free. But, you know, going back to the food and the alimentation, even during, you know, the pregnancy, it's very important that you pay attention as well to your macronutrients. You know, how much protein you're ingesting, how much good fats you're ingesting, and carbohydrates, and keep all those things in balance. You know, we have a tendency, because of some, I would say, guidelines, misguided guidelines that we've had, to avoid fats when actually they're extremely important, and especially during pregnancy, because they are the precursors of our hormones. And also because when you think about it, 70% of our brain is made out of fat. That's why I was, I want to emphasize on that, because during pregnancy, it's going to be vital that you ingest, the good, quantities, and even supplements, especially when we're talking about DHA, EPA, which are certain fats that we can't produce ourselves. It's important that we actually make that a big, I would say, portion, a very big portion of our plate. Yeah. So, and especially during that time, during pregnancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you think about it, when you think about the composition of breast milk, the composition of fat is huge. Yeah, that tells you how baby must be fed in the first place, and how the mother herself should feed herself. Yeah. And we're making war on fats, and obviously I'm not talking about the bad fats, which are the trans fats, the hydrogenated fats that are extremely harmful for your health. I'm talking about good fats, where that the ones you can find, the omega-3s and certain omega-6 are important. They need to be kept in balance. We should have a ratio of 1:1 of omega-3 to omega-6. Nowadays, we have a 1:20, 1 omega-3 to 20, which is more or less the norm. And this is why we have foods that are more pro-inflammatory. So let's be careful about all the vegetable oils and things like that are actually full of omega-6, which is too much for what we need, for instance. And so let's focus on, things that will bring omega-3s. So I mean, the first thing I always have in mind is fish. But fish, which ones? Because, and there's always two sides of, of the sword, because fish are excellent, but you need to be careful which ones you're consuming, because the ocean, and as much as the air, is full of pollutants and mercuries and things that are actually harmful to you. So you want to select smaller fish, like and there's an acronym for that, which are called the smash fish, which is, for instance, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring, which are smaller fish. Yeah. Salmon is the biggest one of all of them. Mm-hmm. They're smaller fish, but it will, which means that they will have less mercury amount in it, but higher amounts of omega-3s, for instance. Mm-hmm. They are vegetable sources of, plant sources of omega-3, but they're not as absorbable and digestible. Like, we can add chia seeds to our diet. We can add flax seeds. Hemp seeds are extremely high in omega-3s as well. And they're extremely good to have, in your diet. Like, you could even grind them, which is the best way to extract what's in it. Uh-huh. But you don't want to let them oxidize. For instance, if you're grinding them, make sure that you keep them in a sealed container in the fridge if you're going to keep it for a couple of days. If not, you have to consume it right away. Uh-huh. Okay, so so I think it's important to talk about how you pick your micronutrients, and it should represent 50% of your food, of your plate, when you are pregnant, or even when you're trying to get pregnant, and even after pregnancy, because what you will need and what you be depleted of. And then there needs to be a big focus on protein. Protein and fats are the things that are going to sustain your energy levels, so your satiety as well along the day. And this is why you need to make sure that your plate is like around 50% fats. And I'm talking specifically during that time, you know, it changes along the along your necessity, along the years and stuff. But during that time, we need to be focusing on that. And then protein comes next, in terms of you need to have a good portion of protein at each one of your meals. Like, it has to represent, for a woman, your portion of protein needs to represent more or less the palm of your hand on your plate. Yes.
Okay.
But I would for instance, in the morning, if you want a healthy breakfast, I would suggest having eggs, for instance, and a minimum of 2 to 3 eggs for a woman.
2 to 3 eggs a week or a day?
In the morning. I'm talking about the morning, and for breakfast, for instance, because that will be the minimum amount to have actually your protein levels met for that meal, for that specific meal. And you have to be conscious that at every meal you have to have a good portion of protein, a decent portion of protein, which is that palm of your hand, at each meal. Wow. And a good portion of fats, because that will keep you from snacking between meals, number one. And will provide your body with all the minimal and necessary nutrients it needs to build up another being. Remember that you're in a building another human being. So it's important. And the carbohydrates need to be well chosen. They represent more or less, so the protein will represent 25% of your plate, and the rest is the carbohydrates. And we need to look at complex carbohydrates. So that's fruit, vegetables, rice and beans, and avoid as much as possible anything that has been processed and packaged. And, you know, if that's the kind of things that,
for example, ham and cheese and.
Okay, so if we want to talk about ham,
bad fat.
Well, ham. Here's the thing about ham. And I let's bring bacon, because we eat more bacon in the UK than we eat ham, generally speaking. It's all about where it's coming from and how you're actually cooking it, right? Okay. So if your bacon is coming from the farmer's market, and the person that is growing their pigs is actually respecting them, and they go outside and they roam freely, they might be a good option. Obviously, you don't want to abuse. And you need to be careful on how you're frying them and what you're frying them into. You know,
what's the best to fry, Anne?
You know, I would say, generally speaking, frying is not a good option, right? Really, because we alter things and we oxidize things.
Actually, with bacon, I never put any oil, because the oil comes out.
Exactly, but because there's the natural lard coming out of it, and lard is actually, it's what we call the saturated fat, and because it's saturated, it doesn't oxidize, and it doesn't change in a way that your body cannot process it.
Very good.
So butter, ghee, and coconut oil are wonderful things to cook and to fry things. You know, those are the 3 things I would suggest for people to use. Butter, ghee, and coconut oil. Even lard itself, if it's coming from a good source. Okay. It's all about that. Now, if
it's quite hard to find good sourced food.
To be fair, I would say
to most is.
You know, to be fair, I find that in the UK you have a lot of farmers markets where you have
that's true.
Farmers markets where you find people that actually have the grass-fed meat, they grow animals in a way, and they bred animals in a very, very healthy way. And this is what I would say, go for the happy meat, happy eggs, happy animals. And this is, it will have a different energy even in the food you ingest. So go for that.
Totally. Because everything influences how the we're ingesting the energy of the meat. So if they're not wild and free, then we're ingesting all of that.
Yes.
Sadness.
That exactly. So go for happy animals. And I mean, yeah, I don't think that, I mean, and that's a client of mine that recently talked to me about, because she's vegan and she's trying to get pregnant. And I was like saying, okay, would be nice maybe for you to add something like eggs in your diet. And she's like, I'm fine if they're happy eggs. And happy eggs means that they need to come from a farm. They need to come from and that is, and yeah, I love that way of putting it.
Yeah, I think we've got, like, before this finishes, 2 minutes. I wanted to talk quickly on the sweets. Like, I feel nowadays more and more adults give sweets to the young ones, and the young ones are used to it, and they just go to the shop to buy sweets. It's kind of the best thing that they can do, as they've got money in the pocket. They can go to the shop and buy sweets, Coca-Cola, whatever.
I mean, giving sweets to your children, it's kind of like giving alcohol to them, literally. And honestly, it is. If we can avoid giving sugar, generally speaking, to our kids before the age of 2, that's already setting them up for not enjoying them as much. They will control themselves much more, because the more you consume it, the more you want it, and the higher the quantity you'll need.
So the body isn't in that state of well-being. It always needs, it's asking, it has an addiction.
I mean, the problem is it's a big subject to respond in 1 minute.
It is sorry. It's one I wanted to talk about, and I just noticed.
But that's okay. We can restart a conversation if you don't want this to cut, and resend me a link. Yes,
I think it's gonna
we
stop.
can.
It's
gonna stop, but you can resend me a link, and we can start a new conversation.
Shall we do that?
And finish that. Just stop it now, and we'll resend me a link. Okay. And we'll answer that question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
Hey. Thank you.
So regarding sweets, because it's a big subject. It is. Yes, I was saying earlier that giving sweets to your children is a bit like giving alcohol to your children, because in terms of metabolic processes and what your liver has to do, it is pretty much the same. I mean, it's very comparable. And we have a tendency to say, oh no, but it's just for this occasion, and occasions actually happen every day or every week. Even every week is too much. Certain first we should have certain rules. Sweets should not come home ever. We shouldn't have, there's things that we should not buy and have in our pantry or cupboards. They shouldn't be part of our routines. And and we have, in a way, to re-educate ourselves first, because as I said earlier, our children will mirror what we do. So if you're not actually yourself having a good diet, and this is where motherhood or parenthood is a big challenge, because the first job you have to do is reparent yourself. And have some discipline yourself with what you're doing with your own body and the choices you take for your own health, because that will impact your children. And so yes, I mean, certain things shouldn't be home. It's okay to indulge in things sometimes, but not as often as we are doing it as a society. The problem is it's kind of,
and obviously it's different if you bake a cake at home, or if you buy in the shop the candy stick or the chocolate bar. And so many times what I find is is the adult. The parent is so stressed with a lot of things, they can't channel. And the easiest is to say, okay, here's the chocolate. It's like a substitute of they're not having their time with the child, and the child wants the baby, the toddler wants, or the 5-year-old wants the sweet, and they give it just to. And I have friends, they give it every day because they can't. They say, oh, but he wanted 5 things and I gave him only 1. They already see that as a step forward, but it's every day. It's
yes, and the problem is it has consequences on your health in the future, and people, you know, I wouldn't say people are not conscious of it, but there's so, and I don't want to actually, you know, accuse or blame people, because it is the rhythm of life we have nowadays, and it's extremely stressful. However, if we don't take steps now, and if we don't take conscious that it is our responsibility, and that it will have massive consequences in their future, in their children. You know, for instance, diabetes type 2 in the UK is in the rise, and we're talking about like 20% of the population nowadays, and it's probably even more, because the last numbers I had were from 2016 or something like that. And Portugal is not too far behind. Portugal is 14% of the population has diabetes type 2, and we know that diabetes.
Yeah, that's what I feel when I'm here now. I see so many young, I think more than when I was young, because I was brought up in Portugal, and I grew up in Portugal, and everywhere, every child has a sweet in the hand, a candy.
Well, yeah, I mean, and our habits actually bring that, and they have, and it is a vicious cycle. Unfortunately, I was talking earlier about the kinds of micronutrients we should have in our plate, and when you think about it, what is the most ubiquitous breakfast in Portugal in the morning? What do people do? They go to the pastelaria, okay? They go to the bakery, and they buy a cake full of sugar and trans fats, because it is trans fats, I'm sorry guys, and it's hydrogenated fats, vegetable oils, and they drink a coffee with it. So it's a massive injection of carbohydrates with bad fats that your body is going to have to detoxify, with massive injection therefore of sugar. Okay, so you're going to get a sugar rush, and you get a coffee on top of it that will stimulate you. No wonder people are hungry 1 hour after, because they get that insulin peak, and then you have this crash where you have no energy. So people keep on snacking all day long, then they keep on having coffees because they're crashing down, and they need to keep themselves going about and be sustain their day. And if you only change that kind of breakfast for something that will actually bring you more satiety and bring you more energy, this is why I was talking about good fats and proteins, you will be able to sustain your morning without stimulants, for one thing. So maybe you can have your morning coffee because it's part of your ritual, and fair enough. And I'm not here to take away your pleasures, but you could have a very pleasurable breakfast that will sustain you until lunchtime without you reaching out for more sweets or more stimulants. And that has a massive impact on your way of being as well, and then decisions you take. So you as a parent have a responsibility with yourself to first parent yourself, so you have the ability to give the good stuff to your kids. And we give sweets to our children because we constantly give sweets to ourselves. So if we're not able to, it starts with us. If we're not able to actually give us the proper food that real sustainers, how can we do it for our children and be the example they need to see? Yeah. So yes, it starts with us, and this is why I'm saying, you know, it is yes, it is difficult to say no, because it's ubiquitous, and you go to any supermarket and the freaking sweets are at the cashiers, where at the eye level of the children it's there, and unfortunately television advertising is all you know, about sweets, is all around, and it's, you know, we're constantly programming our children to want and ask for more.
Yeah, and not just on TV, on the buses, on the, you know, on the billboard street. Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So in a way, we kind of need to be the responsible person, and it is a big responsibility to be a parent.
It is,
and it starts with
nowadays it's so hard, and people have so many things and they haven't got time.
Yeah.
It's just easier to say yes.
You know, I'll say this. It's a matter of priorities, you know, and it's, yes, we haven't got time, and yes, but what is more important to you? And you know, it's going back to basics and where you actually allocate your time. And when you tell me as well, it's a money issue, I actually sometimes wonder, really, is it a money issue? Because you're going to spend more bills paying for doctors or medication over the counter because of you know, because your kids will get more sick.
Yeah, and even that was another topic I wanted to because people say it's expensive. Like, for example, in London, in England, there's a lot of the fast food shops, the chicken shops, and they're always with teenagers. And so, but I hear them say, so like they spend, I don't know, £3 on the chicken chip.
I know.
But if you go to the supermarket, you can buy for £3 a much healthier meal. Egg, salad, and but a lot of the times people have the idea that it will be cheaper to go to the corner shop instead of buying a good meal.
It is a matter of actually putting everything in perspective and having conscious of the consequences of the choices you make. You're absolutely right. Eggs are cheap, you know, very, very cheap actually, and you can make a really good meal just with, you know, with eggs and a bit of salad on the side, or even, you know,
green beans.
There's so many things we could do. Green beans, sweet potato, and those are not, they're not that expensive. It is, you know, it is a misconception, and also it is and when I was talking, for instance, about the farmers market and the kind of meat you eat, you know, you don't need to eat meat every day. You don't need to eat fish or go to the fishmongers for fish. You know, even canned fish, which is not ideal. Obviously, it's not the best, but you know, canned sardines in oil, be careful. Make sure that it's in olive oils and not any seed oils or vegetable oils. That's very important. Canned sardines are extremely cheap. You go to the supermarkets and you find smoked mackerel that is already cooked, that is quite cheap as well, and you make a quick salad with that. And so no, don't come and tell me it is expensive. It's not true. It depends on how you're doing your accounting and where you put your priorities on. And you know what, I respect everyone's choices, but just don't come and complain about the consequences of the actions you took or the choices you made. Because it is about taking our responsibilities and what we are showing to our kids. And I was mentioning the fact that you know, it was important to cook dinner with our children and showing them what we're doing and giving them I would say transmitting the love for that, you know, and showing them ingredients. I mean, my son loves to put himself on a chair next to me while I'm cutting vegetables. And now he's 3 years old. He's going to turn 4 very soon. now. He peels the carrots with me. He cuts the carrots with me. I let him, like we're talking about, letting the flow of things. It's time for him to understand how to use a knife, how to cut things with all safety,
Yeah. And
that is important, because if you involve them in the cooking process, they will be more inclined to taste the food you're making. They will be more inclined to eat their own food and taste new things.
Yeah, because they're being involved, and as well we're sharing our knowledge with them, and our passion and our love, and as well
it is quality time.
Yeah, quality time, and as well giving them responsibilities which will make them, we all need to feel useful and have a relation. That's very Montessori, to give little tasks, little responsibilities that the little ones can do. They can wash.
Absolutely. It is, for me, it is it is just a natural process, and we forgot, it's very easy to put our children in front of screens because sometimes we need to. Yes, we do. There are moments where we need to do certain things, and we need to have that peace and quiet, and especially because we live in societies where we are all separated from each other, and there's not a grandparent around. There might be a single mother living alone with her children, and she needs that moment. So I'm not judging anyone that does that, but you need to keep a balance, and you need to put some time aside to show how important it is to appreciate food, meal prep together, and the moment where we sit at the table and enjoy food together without screens.
That is so important. And more and more people don't do that nowadays, isn't it? Sit down at a table, no screens. And social life,
and when your children are asking for sweets, you could always answer, listen, I'm not going to give you sweets now, but later on I'll actually put time aside so we can actually bake a cake together, make our own sweet, and it could be something very simple, preparing
that's a good tip.
There are so many options. Yes,
that is such a good tip. And when the child asks and we don't know what to say and we just say yes because we don't want to say no, is give another solution. I won't give you now because later on we'll bake a cake.
Well, we'll bake a cake, and we'll and we'll eat something that's going to give you more energy for the rest of the day. This is not going to be good for you. I mean, there are plenty of things, and it's not always easy to reason children. I know what I'm dealing with.
We need to be really calm and have a tone of voice and empathy with the child. We need to liaise in that sense, and I mean, I've never had any trouble with children. Whatever I say, they believe, and I think it's because of that. The way I get a relation with the child. I'm seeing exactly what they need and how could I help them. What would be beneficial?
Do you have children?
We're talking about the priorities.
Do you have children yourself, Inés?
I don't have children.
Okay.
I have.
Okay. I'll tell you. I'll tell you this.
I've been nanny, and I have had two long-term nannies from babies. The last one was pretty much like my child, but I know it's different. But in the classroom,
and I'll tell you this, because with the parents, they will probably lash out and be more
do a little game.
Yeah, they will most likely with the parents do things that they won't do with people from the outside, and I see that with my son, and I see that because I have the experience of being an auntie. I was an auntie. I was the favorite auntie for years and years to come, and I've never had any trouble getting my niece and nephew, to the direction I wanted them to go, until my son came. And being the master he is to me, and teach me, the lessons I need to learn with life. And it's true that
I believe
well, it's true that
to teach us as well.
Yes. Yeah. And I have obviously much more difficulty to convince my son to do certain things or to lead him to where I want to go than any other
I know
child that I've been around.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, the trick is I mean, and there's no trick really. It's really to listen, emphasize, and sometimes saying no.
Yeah.
And it's no, because I've decided it's no, and because I'm your mother and I know what's right for you, because there are moments where we can't reason with them and they won't be able to understand, and you can try and understand and blah blah blah, but you just let it go. You can, say, I know it frustrates you, I know you're not happy about that, but I believe this is the right way to go, so I'm sorry, it's gonna be no. And let them and that happens.
And sometimes it is beneficial to just let them cry a little bit. There's no harm in that,
Well, they have to deal with frustration. You can let them cry and be there, just be like, I understand you, I know you're sad, and
but like,
mommy's here if
what
you want.
I have found is the following situation's the same. The child won't cry as much because they've already passed through that phase. Nobody likes crying really, and generally they already know that they're just trying it out. Obviously they're upset because they didn't get the sweet, for example, but the next time if the adult maintains no, you've already had one, is no, it's best for you, it won't be good for your tummy, whatever.
Well, think about it in a different way. Think about it in a life or death situation. There are children that are allergic and highly allergic to certain foods and that they can't have. And when it's that case and your child is asking for peanut butter and actually is highly allergic to it, obviously you're not going to give it to him, right? Because it could kill him. So if you think about sugar in the same way, and if you start thinking like that, you'll be a bit more strict, and without the responsibility is different. So we need to think about things in that way. Sugar and sweets, generally speaking, and we said sweets, sugar, we're not talking about all the bad stuff that is in there, the dyes, the conservatives that make your children hyperactive, that actually are a reason why your children are sometimes get skin rashes or get allergic, things like that. I mean, for instance, I had to make a choice with my son that he can't have certain foods because it gives him eczema. So I really have to be strict on certain things, and he knows it. He knows, no, I can't have this because there's this and that, and and it's even funny to hear. But sometimes he comes and asks, mommy, I really want that ice cream. Mommy, please, just a tiny bit. And I'm like, no, son, because that tiny bit could really produce effects that are really bad on you. But we can go home and do something different and do this and that. And what I try to do is I always have something that will compensate for that. I always carry around some kind of compensations, but nothing better than the old fruits and nuts and seeds, like a banana, an apple, grapes, things that they lack naturally, and that's it. You make it simple. Make it simple.
And the influence of the brain development on the brain development, our brain develops until we're 3.
Oh, no, your brain develops until you're 20 something years old. Your brain doesn't stop developing. And actually, I will tell you,
no.
With all,
of course we grow, but a person is fully grown at 6, 7. Obviously they grow, we grow more.
No, I'm telling you, your brain develops, and
the base,
they grow, and it keeps on developing until you're 20 something years old.
Oh, 30, I know, but the
20, yes.
The most important, the basic of a human is 6 years old, 6, 7.
Well, but if you put it in those circumstances, and then you are actually assuming that a child of 6 or 7 years old is capable of understanding or grasping concepts that
I'm not
even
explaining. I'm saying we grow. I felt growing when I was 30 as well, but I'm saying the base, the most important years of growth, it's much more important, for example, well, maybe it's the same importance, but it's so crucial at 3 years old, giving them the right nutrition because they're still growing, it's developing. It's the most important phase rather than 30. Obviously, it's also important at 30, but did I explain better now?
I understand what you mean, what you're saying. Yes, obviously it is very important. Those years are crucial. Yes.
Yeah.
But I want to also mention that it's not over, and it's not because you've messed up before that you can't recover.
No, I didn't mean that.
Because
no, but
and also because here's the thing, the brain, yes, there are certain parts of your brain that will be more flexible and that will still be in the state of building process until a certain age, and then other things develop, but it's still and it is still in the process of developing after that. And even though there are certain things, nothing is set in stone, and yes, this age is crucial to implement certain habits that will have an impact on your life further down the line. Yes, I get what you're saying. But I think it's important to say that it's not over, and also because teenage years, when people think that our teenagers are, already, they have their brain. No, they're not fully finished. Let me tell you.
I didn't mean that.
That's why you need and that's why we need to parent them as well. We need to, it's not over. Our job keeps on going because especially because there's so many hormonal changes around that time, which has an influence on how your brain reacts and things like that. It's also very important that you pay attention, even more so, I would say, during teenage years. And because this is when you actually even set habits for your adulthood. I know when you're a child, when you're up to a certain age, you eat what your parents give you. When you become a teenager, and this is what you mentioned about teenagers going to the corner shop or getting that fried chicken and stuff because they have money in their pocket and they can choose where they go to eat. And this is where it becomes extremely important to make sure you give them good nutrition at that time as well. Yes, you will have settled some good basis as they're younger, but don't forget that when they become teenagers, they have the peer influence. And you need, you as a parent figure, you need to be more prevalent than their peers in terms of influence, and it's your job. It's your job.
Interesting. No, it's like the early years is to develop the taste and the habits and the love, and then teenage years is more the habits than that, because by the teenage years the taste is all there, isn't there? So it'll be more like you're saying.
And this is where this is where I was this is why I kept on saying your brain keeps on actually developing until 20 something years old, but your taste will evolve all your life. And when people say, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that, it's they haven't actually learned to appreciate. Because I like to say, I like the word appreciate or enjoy certain things. And I'm going to take myself as an example. I was a very fussy eater as a child. My mom is traumatized, and she always says how hard it was to make me eat and stuff. And nowadays I eat everything. But let me tell you, it was a lifelong process. there are things that I hadn't eaten until I got pregnant, until I got 40 years old. You know, so this is why I'm saying there's always hope, and we, you know, nothing is set in stone, and we can learn to unlearn what we think we know. And even the taste buds evolve. Remember that our taste buds actually renew themselves every 2 weeks. So just by that tells you something about your taste, which means that you could start to appreciate something by, you know, keeping on adding it on a regular basis to your food, and things that you didn't like. I mean, they are, sometimes it's allergic, or sometimes you got sick in the past because you ate certain stuff, and obviously it's really hard to go back to that. But there's always hope, and people can change, and the taste can change, but you need to be, you know, it's all in your head, and it's about working your mind and how you think about things. Digestion itself starts in your mind, because you start thinking about food. That's when your saliva gland starts to actually secrete more saliva, which will in turn stimulate your gastric juices, and digestion starts already. Just we call it the cephalic phase of digestion. So this is why it's important. And this is why it's important to have mindful eating. Why? Because if you don't go through that cephalic phase of digestion, where you actually prepare the food, or you look at the food, or you think about the food you're going to eat, and if you just grab something and swallow it down, you haven't prepared your body to ingest the food, and you're not going to get the best out of nutrients, because your digestion hasn't been fully developed there. So this is why also meal preparation, and the time you actually put into having, at least I would say, have one meal a day, sitting down at your table with your family without screens, for the mindful eating.
Oh, so good. I think we cover. Actually, I've always heard it 7 years. Every 7 years, our tastes change. No.
Well, you know, it could be. You know, we say that, first of all, the body you have now there's no one cell in your body that was there when you were born. Because your body renews itself constantly. We talk about, for instance, for the skeleton, it's about 10 years, more or less, but some other things are faster. And I was talking about the taste buds, which is every 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And because yes, and actually the lining of your gut, generally speaking, your gut starts here, you know, your gut lining starts here, from the mouth until the anus. So, and that lining renews itself constantly, because it's very thin, and it needs renewal constant. Some other things of your body won't renew as often, but hormonally speaking, things can change every 7 years. We talk about cycles of 7. I wouldn't, you know, it depends from one person to another. It depends of your environment and things like that. It's not that rigid.
Things change, and people should explore more. People explore more.
It's a choice. Again, it's a choice, and well, it's, you know, I would say even our personalities can change, and we have the right to become whoever we want to be, and we don't, you know, because people say I'm like this, I'm like that, I don't like this, I don't like that, and I bet you that 10 years down the line they would never say the same thing and things like that, because life changes us and shapes us in different ways, and the more adaptable you are, and the more you get out of life. So yes, it's about how you accept things, and
the flow.
There's one thing that you mentioned in the things you wanted, and I want to mention quickly. You spoke about when we were first talking about talking. You talked about sun and water.
I think so good you remembered. Yeah, there was a few things more, but I got busy and then I couldn't remember. Yeah.
Sun and water, and it's maybe it's not part of nutrition, but it is part of our well-being. And and sun exposure is a very important factor for our well-being and to regulate your circadian rhythm. Sun exposure is and this is why it's so important to be outdoors as much as possible, to get this morning sunlight, to balance our biorhythm. Our body needs to be living connected to nature and to the sun and through the seasons all year long. So being outdoors, having children playing outside, like we were saying, and with the dirt and everything, it's part of the nutrition of their body, and the sun exposure is very important. Water is also very important, and it's important that we drink clean water. And we hydration is a complicated thing. It's a complicated subject, but I would say, water is so important too, because it carries so many purposes, especially to dispose of our waste and actually to bring some nutrients. We need, our body fluids are around water, structured water. So drinking loads of water on a regular basis to help that process going is very, very important. And I would stop there, I guess, that because you mentioned it, I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, thank you. I'd forgotten. And it's interesting how you put it. Yeah, because I was thinking more of the sun and the water to grow our vegetables and food, how it's important instead of. This is the thing. It's very nice.
And actually, it's a good comparison. We are like fruits and vegetables. We need water and sun.
Yeah, exactly.
The same way. We don't do photosynthesis. We don't. However, our cells need the energy from the sun, and they need the water, structured water, to actually function properly. So we do need, as much as plants and animals, generally speaking, sun and water.
Yeah.
So yes, it is very important.
Wow. Yeah, I think we've spoken a lot. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed Audrey.
You're very welcome, Inês, and I hope you do very well with your project and trying to inform and make people aware. And thank you for inviting me.
A pleasure. Thank you so much. It was really nice. Yeah.
Okay.
We keep in touch.
Yes, we do. Have a good day.
You too. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And waiting for all.